Hello everyone, this is another video on acute aquatic toxicity of 3 Corexit products, an overview. This was done by Anita George Ariz and James R. Clark for the Exxon Biomedical Sciences Incorporated, Medalers Road, CN 2350, East Millstone, New Jersey. Excuse me a second, I'm going to blow it up to 100%, read it better. Corexit 9527, Corexit 9500, and Corexit 9580 have low LC50 or EC50, greater than 100 parts per million, to moderate LC50 or EC50, greater than or less than 1 to 100 parts per million. Toxicity to most aquatic organisms in a laboratory test. However, the experimental species temperatures and exposure duration can significantly affect measurements of toxicity. Now, the link I gave you on the last video to the web page where I got the original data also has a link to the company. And the company, of course, is saying, oh, no, we already find this in use in so many of our products. It's not harmful. Of course, the people that are selling it aren't going to tell you how dangerous it is. All right. Just think. All right. As the old saying goes, follow the money. Corexit oil spill response products are used worldwide in a number of habitats. As a result, Corexit toxicity data have been generated for a variety of aquatic species tested under various experimental conditions. A wide range of acute toxicity data, LC50 and EC50 values, has been generated for the dispersants Corexit 9527 and Corexit 9500, and for the shoreline cleaner Corexit 9580. The LC50 is the concentration that causes mortality in 50% of test organisms in a specified time period, typically 48 to 96 hours. The EC50 is the concentration that causes a specific effect, e.g. decreased growth in 50% of test organisms in a specified time period. Lower LC50 or EC50 values indicate greater toxicity. Corexit toxicity data evaluated in this study were drawn largely from unpublished laboratory toxicity reports and from the literature. Fioca et al. 1991, NRC 1989, Singer et al. 1990. We evaluated toxicity data for 10 species that were exposed to Corexit 9500, 27 species exposed to Corexit 9527, and 7 species exposed to Corexit 9580. The reason I'm doing this is somebody made a comment and asked me which is the greater toxic, the oil or this. And I said, well, they're both bad. This stuff actually is even worse than the oil. All right, results and discussions. The aquatic toxicity of oil spill chemicals is affected by many factors, including exposure conditions, species, and life stage. Data for Corexit 9527 indicates that a wide range of LC50 values can be generated for a single species, depending on exposure duration and temperature. Increasing exposure duration generally results in increased dispersant toxicity, lower LC50 and EC50 values. For example, the invertebrate Mysodopius bahia had LC50 values ranging from 19 parts per million, 96 hours, to greater than 1014 parts per million, 4 hours. The 4-hour exposure is more reflective of exposure at sea because dilution and dispersant can reduce dispersants to non-detectable concentrations within hours. However, most regulatory agents require standard 24 to 96 hour aquatic toxicity tests for dispersant use approval. Therefore, dispersants are evaluated using laboratory test results that show greater toxicity than is expected under field conditions. In general, Toxicity test data for fish are highly variable and is affected by species, size, maturity, and many other variables. Fish generally appear to be less sensitive. 48 to 96 hour LC50 equals 140 to 9600 parts per million to Corexit 9500 and Corexit 9580 than are crustaceans. 48 to 96 hour LC50 equals 21 to 2800 parts per million. The silver side fish, Menadea berylliana, is an exception, having a sensitivity similar to crustaceans. LC50 equals 25.2 to 86.9 parts per million. Species toxicity trends are not apparent for Corexit 9527. Fish exposed to Corexit 9527 had 48 to 96 hour LC50 values ranging from 14.6 to 293 parts per million, whereas the values for crustaceans range from 2.4 to greater than 10,000 parts per million, and for mollusks, the range was 1.6 to 2,500 parts per million. The broad range for all species probably is due in part to variability in laboratory test conditions associated with the large number of tests conducted with this product. Embryo, larval, and early juvenile life stages generally are more sensitive to chemicals than are adults of the same species. Smaller size and less developed metabolic capability may be reasons for the increased sensitivity of early life stages. Data from a variety of dispersants indicate a wide range of EC50 values, 0.0003 to 1,000 parts per million, for early life stages of different species. NRC 1989. Available data indicate that Corexit 9500 and Corexit 9527 and Corexit 9580 have moderate toxicity to early life stages of fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. LC50 or EC50 equals 1.6 to 100 parts per million. Decreasing water temperatures in laboratory resulted in decreased toxicity. Higher LC50 values for Corexit 9527. The scallop Agoropectian iridatus had 96-hour LC50 values ranging from 200 parts per million 20 degrees Celsius to 2,500 parts per million 2 degrees Celsius. The grass shrimp Paleomontius pugio had, I'm sorry about the Latin, I've forgotten it, so I can't pronounce it as good as I used to, had 96-hour LC values of 640 parts per million at 27 degrees Celsius and 840 parts per million at 17 degrees Celsius. Lower temperatures may result in a decreased uptake of dispersant. NRC 1989. Check my time here. I'm still doing okay. Wrong one. Okay, laboratory aquatic toxicity results are highly dependent on test species and experimental conditions, many of which are not representative of field conditions. Consequently, it is essential that spill response coordinators use data that are most relevant to the regional resources requiring protection and most representative of actual exposure conditions, e.g. shorter duration. In addition, decisions to use an oil spill response chemical should not be based solely on its aquatic toxicity. Other factors to consider are data quality, product effectiveness, the toxicity of dispersed oil, dilution, and degradation in the environment, potential adverse effects of all response operations, and the recovery potential of habitats and populations. And it gets into a short biography where she's been doing this for the past 70 years. And reference material also. I'll put the link on here for the PDF document. Read it yourself. This is straight from Exxon. They also use some of this crap up there in Alaska. The Valdez it's just it's mind-boggling to think we've got this many crazy people running around. They're in positions of power. It scares the shit out of me, and I'm sorry for being vulgar. I really am, because I know now after seeing all this, If you ain't right with God, you need to get right with God. Um, it's in Revelations, all this stuff, as a lot of people have been saying, as well as a lot of other religious texts. That's why I'm doing the cross reference to all the various religions. I've been looking into